Great. So our agenda today and what we hope to accomplish is to tell you a little bit about Fair Chance, a lot about our Pathways Partnership Program, and some about our application process. As I mentioned at the end, we will have time for questions. And so as we go through each section, please write down your questions in the chat, and we will definitely get to them in the Q&A at the end. Also, most of the content for this PowerPoint is available on our website, but we will also email, for those of you on the call, we'll email you a PDF after the session in case you want to look at it. So let us go ahead and get started. Jeremiah, are you all set? All right.
Yep, I'm ready.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeremiah O'Brien, and now we will begin talking a little bit about Fair Chance. So today, Fair Chance, founded in 2002, Fair Chance is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that leverages the power of community-based organizations to transform the lives of children, youth, and families impacted by racism, discrimination, and poverty. Each year, Fair Chance partners with nonprofits. Each year, we select nonprofits whose work aligns with my apologies. Each year, we select nonprofits whose works aligns with our mission, and we provide them with free, comprehensive capacity building to improve their infrastructure, sustainability, and growth of their organization. We have worked with over 200 organizations in DC and Prince George's County, Maryland, and in a little bit, you will get to hear firsthand from one of our alumni partners about the Pathways Partnership experience and benefits. But first, I want to tell you about our Pathways Partnerships, starting with who we partner with. The nonprofits that we partner with transform the lives of children, youth, and families by working to achieve outcomes that have proven to be indicators of being on a pathway out of poverty, and our partner organizations and their leaders are at a point where they are ready to invest in capacity building. So first, we select partners who are working towards outcomes in education, health and well-being, housing and income, and/or community, focusing on things like environmental justice, advocacy systems reform, public safety, and equity, and etc. We also ask that these organizations serve one of these populations: parents and infants, early childhood and adolescents, or young adults up to the age of 24. So in short, we are looking for organizations that are working with children and youth, or parents and guardians who are experiencing poverty in DC. And your mission can be about anything. So as long as you're working towards improvements in one of our four outcome domains. So for example, your programming can be music or dance or painting, as long as the arts are just the vehicle through which you are improving academic outcomes or physical health. The second point about who we partner with is about timing. If you are familiar with the concept of the nonprofit organizational life cycle, please type in the chat, yes. Okay, so now we will talk about the nonprofit organizational life cycle. This nonprofit organizational life cycle depicts a generalized trajectory of many nonprofits, starting with an idea, growing the organization, and later moving to a stage where the organization needs to figure out if it is still meeting the needs of its community and can continue to be sustainable. And if not, the organization needs to renew itself or close. This image also depicts the types of capacity building that is needed at the different stages. I share this to show you that our pathways partnerships are not about helping you create your programming, which would be stage one, but they are about helping you build your infrastructure. Fair Chance has two capacity building partnerships programs designed to support organizations in stage two of the nonprofit life cycle. Pathways, which we will talk about today, is designed for organizations that are moving out of stage one and entering stage two. Our Practice Partnership is designed for organizations that are further along in stage two. If you would like to learn more about our Practice Partnerships, please visit our website or sign up for a consultation call. Now, I'd like to ask, are there any questions about anything that I've covered thus far? No questions? Okay, excellent. Now I will hand it over to Anjali Nagpal, our Director of DC Programs.
Hello again. Next slide, please, Jeremiah. The Pathways Partnership is designed to align leadership and organizational practices to build stronger nonprofits. The program is focused on shoring up fundamental parts, aligning your people, your money, and your programs. Pathways partners tend to be nonprofits with budgets typically under $200K per year. They've been running programs, at least one program for a year, have the resources to sustain their operations during the duration of the 8-month partnership, and the executive director has been in their role for at least a year and plans to stay for the duration of the partnership. Leaders can be paid or volunteer, full-time or part-time, as long as they can meet the time requirements of the partnership. And that's just our typical. We also work with larger organizations with larger budgets in the Pathways Partnership. It's really about what your capacity building needs are and whether or not this partnership aligns with what you're looking for. During the partnership, nonprofits work in two of the following capacity building areas: board development, fundraising, leadership and management, and program evaluation. To learn more about each of these areas, you can visit our Pathways webpage on our website. And at the end of the partnership, partners walk away with an increased understanding in two focus areas and revised or new tools, policies, and procedures. Our goal is really to make sure that an executive director and the board is confident in leading their organization. Next slide, please, Jeremiah. Thank you. So capacity building is a term that gets used a lot, but can mean different things. One common definition is listed here. Capacity building strengthens the management, governance, and performance of nonprofit organizations so that they can better achieve their missions and have greater social impact over time. The Pathways Partnership is a type of capacity building where you get someone by your side, a coach, a sharer, a thought partner, someone to help you navigate the things that are needed to make your organization function well. Some important things to understand about the Pathways Partnership. It's a space for executive directors, board members to learn, share, and create. Fair Chance's capacity building is done in partnership with executive directors and a board representative, at least one, so that not only is the work designed and tailored to the unique needs of your nonprofit, but the nonprofit leaders also have the knowledge, skills, and confidence needed to build and use those systems, tools, and processes after the Fair Chance partnership is completed. Partners work with one Fair Chance capacity building specialist for the entire duration of the partnership, but that capacity building specialist has the resources and support of Fair Chance's team behind them. We understand small nonprofits, which is why our services are free and customized. A nonprofit industry best practice may not actually be a best practice for your organization. And so we're looking to really customize to meet your needs. There are also things that our partnerships are not. For those of you who may have worked with consultants, please note that we are not consultants. We are capacity builders, which means that we don't do the work for you. We do the work together. The success of any partnership is dependent upon how much the executive director and the board representative put into our work together. This is why timing is something important for you to consider before applying. Executive directors should ask themselves, do you plan to be focused on working on your organization's systems, procedures, and policies from September to April? Is learning and working collaboratively in a virtual setting right for you? Do you have a board member who's available to work on board development and leadership and management during the partnership? One last thing to consider about timing is that if your organization is in financial crisis, this is not the right time for a partnership. Because if you're worried about keeping your doors open, it's very hard to also have the bandwidth to focus on capacity building. The partnership is also not a way for you to get someone else to do some of the things that are on your plate. Our capacity building specialists are here to support you and make getting those things done easier by having a coach, a guide, a sounding board, but we do not do the work for you. And while we engage your board and staff in the work as needed, depending on what you're working on, you can't delegate the partnership work to them. Next slide, please, Jeremiah. All right. So this partnership is an 8-month program with several components. The program begins with a group orientation that is designed to prepare you for the partnership and to learn more about Fair Chance, the other cohort partner organizations, and their executive directors and board representatives. Executive directors participate in cohort-based leadership development activities, including a leadership style assessment and a multi-session discussion group. We do an organizational assessment that's the foundation of the partnership. It helps create a customized work plan that establishes the goal that the executive director, the board representative, and the Fair Chance capacity building specialist will set out to achieve during the partnership. Even though our capacity building partnerships are free, our partnerships do require a considerable investment in time, in the leadership's time. We expect that executive directors devote 8 hours per week for the duration of the partnership to doing the work needed to achieve the goals mutually agreed upon in the work plan. Fair Chance capacity building specialists also devote 8 hours per week to that work. Throughout the partnership, executive directors and capacity building specialists meet every week for about 2 of those 8 hours. And if board development or leadership and management are areas that we work in together, a designated board member will also need to devote about 3 hours per week for about 4 months, from January through April, to doing work on the partnership work that we've decided in the work plan. Throughout the partnership, there will be cohort learning opportunities, times when we'll bring together executive directors and others as needed to learn and share around specific topics. In previous years, the Pathways executive directors have done a leadership workshop using Brene Brown's Dare to Lead workbook. And we've also held a workshop on the board's role in fundraising for all of the cohort's executive directors and board members. We also hold a small get-together at the end of the partnership because we believe in honoring and celebrating all of our hard work. After the partnership, there's a survey that you have to complete so that we can tell the story of the impact of our work together. Additionally, during your partnership and after you've become a Fair Chance Partner alumni, you get access to some additional opportunities for continued capacity building support through our network services program. This includes a listserv exclusively for executive directors, pro bono legal counsel provided by Hogan Lovells, and quarterly executive director learning community sessions. Next slide, Jeremiah. So just to summarize everything that I just said, which was a lot of detail, the partnership is 8 months long. It goes from September 2023 through April 2024. We focus on board development, fundraising, leadership and management, and program evaluation. You are assessed in all of those areas, and then we pick 2 to work in. Up to 8 hours of work per week for the executive director, which is 2 hours with a capacity building specialist and 6 hours of independent work between meetings. Board member actively engaged in board development and leadership and management work with the capacity building specialist, which comes to about 3 hours a week for about 4 months. And You are required to participate in cohort-based activities, both in leadership development, in the workshops, and to submit data through our evaluation at the end of the partnership, as well as 1 year after the partnership ends. I'm going to ask you to hold any questions you have until the end. During our Q&A session, but feel free to write any questions into the chat so that you don't forget them if needed. So next slide, please, Jeremiah. We have great capacity building specialists at Fair Chance, and I have the privilege of working with and introducing today Sweta Kamara, a Pathways capacity building specialist. Sweta came to Fair Chance with over 15 years of experience working with small, mid-size, and large organizations in the nonprofit, government, and quasi-public arenas in organizational development, change management, systems and process improvements, and leadership development. I'm going to turn it over to Sweta now so she can introduce our alumni speaker and ask some questions about the partnership experience.
Thank you, Anjali. Good morning, everyone. I have the great pleasure of introducing one of our Pathways alumni, Charlyn Anderson, who is the founder and executive director of Starting With Today. Starting With Today is a charitable nonprofit organization in the Washington, D.C. area that promotes Black well-being and liberation. In May 2018, Starting With Today launched the Shape Up, which is a barbershop talk series, which provides free group therapy and wellness sessions led by and designed for Black men in the Washington, D.C. area. As a response to its success in June 2020, the organization also launched My Hair Appointment, which is a space for Black women to define, explore, and cultivate their own well-being. I'll share a little bit about Charlyn. She is a community advocate, a womanist, and a social entrepreneur. She can truly be found outside playing with her friends. I've seen Charlyn. Charlyn likes to be out and about in the DC area, so be on the lookout for her. She is also a mentor for the US Dream Academy. She believes in honoring and elevating her communities in dope, fun, and authentic ways. So without further ado, welcome, Charlyn. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for this opportunity and your warm welcome, Sweta.
You're most welcome. So we're going to go into a couple of questions where we're going to explore Charlyn's partnership experience. Hopefully this will provide some insights for you around, how to kind of think through maybe how your experience would be, but also to kind of pay attention to some of the key reasons why you would want to consider applying for a partnership with Fair Chance. So we'll start with that question with Charlyn. Why did you apply to Fair Chance? What did you hope to achieve?
I don't think I had too many goals. I know why I applied. I knew we needed help. I knew we were at an inflection point at that point of starting with today's growth. And I knew that we had, at that time, I believe it was beginning of 2020 when I applied, and we had almost 2 years of the Shape Up, and I can see our scale and trajectory beginning to grow. And with that, it was like I knew we needed more support because I didn't know what I didn't know. So I think one of the benefits. So anyway, I was invited to look at Fair Chance as an option, and as I was going through the application, I was really like, I don't know if we were ready yet, but just really was a great experience of trying to figure out what I didn't know as a leader.
At some point, was there a specific thing as you were applying or going through the process that you were like, okay, I'm hoping to achieve certain types of things for your organization? Could you share more about that?
Certainly. Thank you so much for the follow-up. Yes. So board development was one of the strong things we were looking at, and definitely fundraising. I think were the two things. It was like, we need to figure out how to do this better, how to do this stronger, how to create some better systems, and see what tools and resources were available for us as a small nonprofit that we had not been privy to up to this point.
So was it difficult when you got into the partnership? Was it difficult to find time for the partnership? Just share how you were able to make time for the partnership.
Can we talk 2 seconds about the application? Because I think if you
Yes, please. Talk.
The application is extensive. So, in the nonprofit world, not saying I do this, but there's a tendency for some nonprofits to wait to the day of to start an application process, or maybe the day before. Yeah. That method will not work here for the fair chance. Give yourself, review the application today if you can. Just go through it. It's going to take some time. And I think the other piece of that is you won't have all the answers, and that's okay as well. Fill it out to the best of your ability, whatever gaps in the application process. And I have taken this, I think Fair Chance was the first application where I realized to give my best. I will always begin to shut down if we didn't have one or two things. And so don't do that. Explain where you are in the process and submit an application as complete as possible, but you're going to need, I would say, at least 20, maybe 15 to 20 hours, looking and working through the application. If it's your first time, it's going to take some time.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing advice about applying the actual application. So since we're talking about time and 15 to 20 hours, let's also talk about the time in the partnership. One of the requirements for our executive directors is they have to dedicate 8 hours a week to the partnership. So, and I'm sure there was time that you spent beyond that in certain seasons of the partnership. Was it difficult for you to find time for the partnership? How did you make time for it?
Yes, so definitely a challenge. But for the one-on-one meetings, I think a couple things made it work. One, I have already naturally made Mondays my ease into the weekday. So that's why I do planning. I try to finish up any tasks from the previous week that are causing stress. And so Mondays were the lightest days for me. And so that's the time I use to schedule for our one-on-one meetings, and then kind of use the end of that time to, it's a soft Monday, use the end of that time to kind of work on anything that was a low hanging fruit where I can get some things wrapped up on that Monday. Throughout the week, some weeks went as planned, and other weeks just went as not planned. I think one of the other things we got to talk about with the Fair Chance as a component that I have now made kind of a basis for any long-term engagements is it's really beneficial to actually enjoy who you're working with. And that's one of the philosophies I use for starting with today. And then also too, for my personal development, and this was of course a combination. You're going to spend a lot of time with your capacity building specialist. It needs to make sure it's both a good fit, because that will make it, I can imagine if I didn't, really enjoy Sarita's energy time and her competency, and her skill sets that she brought to our table. So that made it, I think the other piece of it as I got started, when you begin to see results and things moving along, that's energizing for me as a CEO. And so where I didn't know exactly how it would work out initially, as things began becoming clearer and having thought partners and not having to use all my brain capacity to figure out one thing at a time, that we can have several things at the pot. It was really, I think the time made room for itself.
Great. Thank you. So now we're going to talk a little bit more, now that you're on the other side of a partnership, what are the top 2 to 3 ways the partnership has helped, starting with today? And that also could include you also as a leader, since we do have a leadership development component. How are you different, or how is the organization different today as a result of the partnership?
I try not to brag on you specifically, but I think the one of the things what we did in our initial assessment was Sarita did for our cohort, we did a strengths finders assessment. And for me, that like such a strong foundation, but it completely changed the way I viewed myself as a leader, especially in DC. In nonprofit spaces, it's typically white and male is the standard. And then if you have other traits or qualities, they're seen as lesser. So really just saying that the way I lead is effective, and like, what are my strengths? And then how have I built a team around me that covers the things that I'm not great at and I don't need to be great at. So I think I've spent a lot of energy beforehand trying to improve my weaknesses versus like really leaning into my strengths and having other people around whose strengths complement mine. That strategy has taken me and starting with today very, very far. And not seeing the things I'm deficit at. The next piece of that is just really some things we worked on. It was a lot of learning in this Pathways program. And I think that's really, so there are things we learned and we worked through and got language for and got practices for that really wasn't implemented. So maybe 6-8 months, a year, some things we're still implementing from the Pathways partnership. And I mean, so much, the way we fundraise is different. We have a different system that me and Sarita worked on, where we're getting how we receive donations, how are we analyzing our revenue streams, how are we communicating, starting with today's story, what our expectations of board members has changed for so long. I spent so much time and energy thinking it needed to be uniform contributions across our board versus really, again, going to the strength finders and having our board tap in the places where they're strongest and being able to, me as the leader, been saying, hey, I need you for this meeting. I don't need you for this one. This is, we need a fundraiser here. I don't necessarily need you in the space here. So just kind of really understanding how to better collaborate with my board in their gifts, as well as really, I think, not only allowed them to contribute more impactfully, but also has taken the guilt away if they don't feel like they're showing up the way the next board member has. So yeah, did I answer that question?
You did. And I'm sure you get more questions in our Q&A, but before we get there, I wanted to see if you had any additional advice for someone considering applying for the partnership and any other advice about the partnership. Yeah, go ahead.
Definitely do it. I think the wraparound support for the Fair Chance team has been invaluable. And the people who I have had the pleasure to meet over the years have been lights and great people to work with at all points. So it's just a really good community. I think the alumni group chat email forums that we have are invaluable to be able to ask other EDs questions on demand and get responses in real time to questions that you have. And then also Kristen Barney, she does 101. As an alum, you can come back and get 101 questions for things you might be trying to tackle as a leader or as the ED, specifically to either your leadership style or something related to the nonprofit. Yeah, so it's just a really good organization and network to be networked in. It's definitely worth it. And the growth of the organization, I think that one of the things that is kind of understated is the confidence, and not arrogance, but like, I know my organization inside and out. Out and in. Like, you can't tell me anything about this organization that's new to me, because we've done the work. We literally have picked it apart piece by piece. And when I'm having conversations with prospective partners and donors, I can come in really clear about where we are, where we're headed, and the things that we need to really further our mission in a very clear and concise way. And I can answer really hard questions really easily because we've done the work. So I think that benefit has made me, the knowledge has made me more confident as a leader moving forward.
Well, I want to thank you, Charlyn, for answering our questions, sharing about your partnership experience. And I think I'm handing it back over to Jeremiah.
Actually, before we do that, I'm going to ask you a question, Sweeta.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about the day-to-day experience of the partnership from a capacity building perspective. Yeah, could you do that?
So, this is a good question because it actually, the day-to-day experience, I think, will closely match. Maybe I'm not an executive director, but it is a lot of times where I am preparing for that weekly meeting. So that I use that as an anchor to plan my work. I know that I'm going to meet with a board, a partner, that could be the ED and the board representative. And that means that I'm often holding the accountability of the work that is going on in the partnership. I'm making sure we're on track. I'm the one setting the agenda. I'm communicating with you all what to maybe read or what to prepare, what to come back into the next partnership meeting with. I'm also sharing around resources. There's a wealth of resources that we have access to at Fair Chance. And so I'm often kind of preparing for conversations that are to happen, because I think it's really part of this, as Charlyn touched on, this is a learning partnership. And I think it's very hard to have a conversation about what you want to change about your organization if you don't really understand your organization, if you don't understand what is working and what isn't working. And you're also not freely able to think through options. And so I often front load a lot of my partners with resources, examples, samples, templates, so that you can start brainstorming, so you can start really thinking, how would I improve this? How could I improve this? So I spend a lot of time gathering that. And actually, we've had also the great fortune of having a Pathways associate that's been able to do some of that research. But I also, the other thing that a strong part of my day in the life of a capacity building specialist is being a sounding board. So a lot of things, actually, it's not just the 2-hour meetings. I still to this day have conversations and check-ins with alumni board members. I've seen Charlyn already this year. So that's also that. And yes, Charlyn, please add the quick note, please.
As you were talking, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were done, but as you were talking, one of the things came as another benefit for my cohort was the reading meetings, which we did audible. Well, I did audibles because I can multitask while I'm watching and working. But it was such a great moment. And also working with my cohort member was Tyree Moore. And he's over Soul Track, which is an amazing organization. So I think another benefit is being partnered in this cohort with other amazing EDs that are maybe having similar challenges or different challenges or at different spots. We're two very different organizations, and I think we're at two different places of how we approach our work, but I've learned so much from him. And now, like, I call him friend. So just to have that, like, understanding, someone who understands exactly what you're going through, I think is always a benefit. I think the other thing about Fair Chance, this partnership, is that Sweeta and the other staff there, they are really rooting for you. So you don't have to defend your organization or, like, in a way I've had to in other spaces. And I think that's really refreshing that they are on your team, and you can tell by the work and the preparation she puts into making sure that you're successful. That's all.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I was just really adding that, we spend, as capacity building specialists, I guess we function sometimes as coaches, and we do provide advice. We do check-ins. So it doesn't have to focus exclusively on, of course, we're working in 4 capacity building areas, but we are your thought partners. And so I respond to things I'm always happy. TL, who's also a capacity building, Anjali, who's a former capacity builder, we're always able to pivot and answer and react and respond and support things that are going on in your organization that aren't necessarily in the official 4 pathways areas. So we try to be nimble and responsive as capacity builders and not just focused on this is what's in the work plan, which I don't know if we talked about work plans, but yes, there's a work plan that will guide the work that we do together in the partnership. So
Thank you,
now
Sweeta.
do I hand it over to Jen? Okay, yes.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And we're gonna ask that we're gonna do Q&A after Jeremiah talks about application. So Charlyn will be able to stick around for that time as well and to answer some questions at the end. Okay, Jeremiah, take it away.
Okay, now we will talk about the application processes and tips. So now we begin to talk about our priority considerations. So Pathways has 2 priority considerations that reflect our commitment to our mission and advancing racial equity in the nonprofit sector in DC. The first one is at least 50% of the children, youth, and families your organization serves are Washington, DC residents who are experiencing poverty. The second priority consideration is the executive director or majority of the members of the board of directors, including the board chair, identify as people of color. Noting that you can still be a partner even if you don't meet our priority considerations. And just because you meet a priority consideration does not guarantee you will be selected for a partnership. Now we move to sections of the application. So the application for the Pathways Partnership is comprehensive in order for our selection team to get a full picture of your organization and your needs. Some important things to note. The first thing is data. We would like to know the demographics of the children, youth, and families you serve. And if you don't currently collect that data, that is okay. Tell us about who your programs are designed for, and noting that the data on the children, youth, and families our partners serve is important to understanding our impact. So if selected as a partner, you must be willing to track and share this information in the future. Another thing to note is capacity building needs. This section is of great importance. Please take time to really reflect and describe for us your vision for your organization and your current capacity building needs. You can do this by either telling us what you would like to have in place that you do not currently have, or if you don't know what the solution is, you can describe what is not working. For example, you can say that we need a better process for recruiting new board members, or you can say we have not added any new members to the board since our founding, and we want to change that. There's 1-page form for your board chair to complete. It is linked in the application, and you can send to your board chair so that you can access the form and complete it online. After submitting your application, you will be sent a link to sign up to hold 2 interview slots. The first interview is for the executive director and board representative and will be 2 hours long. The second interview is for the executive director alone and will be for 1 hour. We have made some improvements this cycle to make sure that completing your application is convenient as possible. In the program information session, you may link to your website if it describes your programs in full. If you prefer to write about your programs in the application, you may do that instead. In the finances section, we would like to know how much money you spent last year and how much you plan to spend this year. Financial documents such as the budget, statements of activities, etc., are not required. If you do not already have these documents, we do not want you to create one for this application. We will ask you more questions about your finances in the interview. For required attachments, if you have the current information in a format that you use for another application, please send that one in. You do not need to recreate anything for us, but please make sure it has all the requested information. Now we will move to general tips for completing the application. It is our hope that our application provides a space for you to reflect on who you are, what you do, and how you need to develop, grow, strengthen, and improve, both as an executive director and as an organization. Please remember that you are not applying to Fair Chance for funding, and you do not have to sell us a shiny organization with amazing results. In fact, if you are too perfect, we're going to be asking ourselves if you really need a partnership. We're not looking for buzzwords or fancy pros. We're looking for clarity. The more we understand your organization, programs, and capacity building needs, the better your application will be. We hold what you tell us in confidence and do not share it outside of our selection team, which is made up of members from Fair Chance's leadership team and program staff. So you don't have to hide all your pain points. In fact, we need you to share those with us to truly understand your capacity building needs. Another element is helping us understand your finances. Having debt, deficit, or cash flow issues does not necessarily reduce your chances of selection. But as I mentioned before, our model is not designed to help organizations that are in or on the brink of financial crisis, because our program takes time and requires focusing on multiple areas. And financial crisis usually demands immediate action and singular focus. Therefore, explain your financial situation to us as much as you can, because numbers don't always tell the whole story. For example, we partnered with an organization whose funding was very uncertain, but because their programming was run by volunteers and the executive director could work without a salary if need be, the organization was going to be able to successfully complete the partnership. Speaking on the partnership, remember that we work with you during a partnership rather than achieving things for you. Example, we help you develop a fundraising plan. We do not fundraise for you. In writing about your capacity building needs in the application, emphasize what you want to learn or develop in order to achieve your goals. Who Fair Chance selects for partnership is based on a number of factors, and not all of these factors have to do with you or your application. For example, if the applicant pool this year is really large and Fair Chance capacity is small, your application may not be successful this year. But we have had organizations that have received a partnership after applying for 2 years in a row, and some that have applied once and then successfully applied a second time years later. If you are already thinking you may be a better fit for Praxis and have some questions, you can sign up for a consultation. We'll put the link in the chat, and it is also available on the website. If you apply for Pathways and we determine through the selection process that Praxis is the partnership that can best meet your needs, we will let you know, and you will have to reapply for the next Praxis cycle. Applications for the Praxis partnership will not be available until the spring, and the next cohort starts in the fall of 2024. Finally, start early and save your work. Applications are due June 1st, 2023 at 5 p.m. And now we will move to questions.
Thank you, Jeremiah. And I did just put the link to a partnership consultations schedule if you're interested. It is not required that you do a partnership consultation before applying, but if you have any questions, we are here and happy to help. So please feel free to sign up for one if you needed. And now we want to turn it over for your questions. We have about 5 minutes left. So opening the floor to anyone who has questions about the partnership or for Charlyn.
Hey, quick question. Thank you all for the information. I had a question around the board requirement. I can't remember if this was, so I heard that the board member would have around roughly 3 hours of commitment per week, but for 4 months from like the later portion of the fellowship. Is that only a requirement if board development is one of your focus areas. I think I saw you choose 2 of the 4 areas that you get support with. So if board development is a support area, that's when you'll need your board member, or regardless of if board development is a focus area, your board member would be required to participate.
It's both board development and leadership and management are the 2 areas that oftentimes we need board involvement in, or ownership of that work for. So it could be either of those. And I will tell you that we have yet to have a partnership where board development is not one of the areas that we end up working in. You know, we don't predetermine the areas. It really comes out through the assessment. And so you just need to be prepared that more than likely you're going to need to have a board member who's involved and active. There is also, you know, the board, there's a board representative that will be part of the interviews, that will also be attending orientation, and will be completing part of the assessment as well, the board development section of the assessment. So the intensive work is if we work in those 2 areas, but there's going to be some involvement by your board early on in the partnership as well.
Thank you.
Great
I have
question.
one more if nobody else has a question. I don't want to take up all the time. Charlyn, thank you for speaking to your experience. Was curious, where were you in the process of just like discovery with your organization when you applied to the fellowship? And like, what did you prioritize in conveying when you completed your application?
Thank you for the question. Are you asking where we were in the nonprofit life cycle?
Yeah, like how long has was your organization up? Like how far were you into implementation of this idea? And like as you were completing this application, like what things were you trying to convey in your application?
That's a great question. We launched in January of 2014. I applied in January of 2020. So we were 6 years in. When we were initially the first couple years we started, we were doing maybe 8 programs a year. For the first couple years in 2018, when we began the barbershop programs, we probably got closer to 20 programs a year. Since then we're at, I don't know, it's ridiculous. We're probably 40 to 50 public facing programs per year. So if you can see like the trajectory where we were before, now we were the first pandemic class as well. So we really, by the time we got to the interview section, it was supposed to be in person, and then it was Zoom, and then, you know, the rest was history. So just kind of keeping that in mind. But at the time we had, you know, several years, we collect data from the beginning. That was kind of some of the advice I had gotten. So we had data, we had, you know, financials, we had a good understanding of the work that we were doing. So we were pretty far along as far as concept, ideation, and actually having 6 years of experience at that point. For the second part of that, in the application process, I think they do a great job of posing the question. So it's nothing I had to kind of convey. I don't think I thought that much. Is more just like responding to the questions as honestly and clear as possible was my approach. But I think they do a great job as far as like leading the question. So again, as Jeremiah said, you know, it's gonna take some time. Go through it, save it. You know, the first couple pages are, you know, fairly easy, just your info, save it, get a lay of the land, and then kind of go through it. I think if you look at all the questions beforehand, it can kind of guide how you want to approach it from there.
Thank you.
It's up after the application process. It's all up after you get submitted. Don't let that be a deterrent.
Yes, please don't let that be a deterrent. And if it is turning into one, you should definitely contact us, because we are not trying to make this harder than it needs to be, and we want to support you throughout your process. I will also add that if you start an application and you save it, we will know that you have started an application, and we'll follow up. We'll call you before it's due and find out if you have any questions. And so we really do want you to apply, and want you to think about the process and if this is the right time and all of those things before you get started. But if you have questions, we're here to answer them throughout. So, yeah.
Another benefit of starting early. I cannot emphasize that enough. Just get started early.
Thank you so much for that. Marcus, do you have any other questions?
I might have one more.
Go for it.
So very simple question. What's the average number of like applications you all get for a program cycle, and then the number versus the number of spots available?
That's great. Thank you for that. So we have very small cohorts. We have 2 capacity builders who work in the Pathways Partnership. And so we take 4 organizations a year. And we usually receive about double the number of applications. There are times when it's been more than that, but we look to interview almost everyone if we can, and so yeah, we generally tend to get about double. It's competitive,
Great.
but not undoable. So so thank you so much. If you have any other questions that come up, please feel free to contact us. We really appreciate your time. Charlyn, thank you so much for joining us, as well as Sweeta and TL. Thank you for being here. Right.
Thank you all. This is great. This is great.
All right. Have a great afternoon or morning.
Yes.